the applause ends.
And Bill Marx.
God, that was wonderful. I haven't seen that movie well, I'm over 40. God knows when. Way, way back, but I remember some of the brilliant lines. And some that you miss. There's one place where Groucho gets a huge laugh and another line obscured by it. And I'd love to get hold of a script and see what it was. Or that thing where he says, Conductor Chandler or Conductor Wilson, and he says, Inspector, and he says, Inspector yourself. I almost missed that day.
Well, I wanted to start by saying something a little bit silly. I didn't introduce myself earlier. I'm David Owen, co-founder of Sketchfest, because I know most of you are here to see me. There's a scene in Woody Allen's Hannah and Her Sisters where Woody's character he thinks he has a terminal disease, and he's distraught, and he walks into a movie theater, and Duck Soup is playing on the big screen. And he sits down and his mind is racing about this disease he thinks he has, and he starts to look at the screen and say, starts to think to himself, maybe it's not so bad. Even if life is just a blip, look at these guys having a good time, and the lesson is, he starts to enjoy it and realize that and for me, I'm not a religious person, so coming on a Sunday to a beautiful theater like this and seeing Marx Brothers on the big screen is a form of church going. So I don't know, that resonated with me, and I wondered if it's the same for you guys.
Theater is a big part of it. I'll never watch any Marx Brothers on a screen smaller than this and the rest. This should be saved to the end, but we're talking about Woody and that. And, once in a movie, he lists the things that make life worth living. Includes Groucho.
Groucho's on the list, yeah.
Sinatra. The Education of Henry Adams, I think, which probably startled a few people. But if the Marx Brothers had never existed, I have this feeling watching it today that we would have felt something missing from the world.
Yes.
We wouldn't know what it was.
Bill, I wanted to start by asking you about your earliest memories of your dad and your uncles all together, not on stage or on screen, but at a family reunion. What is a Marx Brothers family reunion at the house like?
Did they wear those clothes?
Well, they really didn't. First of all, you have to understand that my father was 50 years older than I was. So most of whatever he did in terms of his professional career was in television or making records. And so my remembrance of him, he was just dad, and they were just uncles. They were just like your dad and your family. We never thought of him, really, because you see, by that time, they'd already done their movie bit. The final movie really was 49, that was Love Happy. And they had families of their own, each one of them. And so they met every day at a place called Hillcrest Country Club and had lunch. So they were together during the day, and they would disperse to their families in the evening, go back to their houses. They saw each other or talked to each other every single day for many years, especially the time through when Groucho was fortunate enough to get You Bet Your Life going for 14 years. And for the most part, we never had family reunions. We really didn't. But I do remember one night when we did have one, and Zeppo was recounting a time when in vaudeville there was a problem with the two guys that were supposed to be in a pony inside one of those horses, and they got sick or something, and so Groucho and Dad decided to get inside the pony and be the pony, you see. And as he was talking about it, he mentioned the fact that they didn't have any kind of coordination with one another at all, and they wound up in the pit, the orchestra pit. And while Zeppo is telling this story, Groucho is on the floor by the time Zeppo is through. And I turned to my mother and I said, I've never seen Groucho laugh like this, ever, uncontrollably. If he thought it was one of the greatest jokes of all time, he'd go, That's what you got from Groucho. But my mother said that Zeppo was the only person in the world that was ever able to make Groucho actually laugh out loud, fall down. And Zeppo was a very funny guy. And that's the one remembrance I have of the one or two reunions that we had. So I want to include Zeppo. He kind of looked like a schlub in there. I mean, a handsome guy, but he had virtually nothing to do other than a hunga-dunga, hunga-dunga. And you know, he left out the most important hunga-dunga.
Dick, was that
that makes me sad for two reasons. One, well, sad and happy, the masks of tragedy and comedy. The earliest reference I heard to the Marx Brothers, I was a little kid. My father was trying to tell me the effect when coconuts came to Grand Island, Nebraska, and no one had ever seen anything vaguely like it in the world. And people lost their seats and slipped to the floor. He said it's such a cliche, rolling in the aisles, but it nearly happened then. And the other part, and he said there were four brothers, Groucho, Chico, Harpo, and Zeppo. He mispronounced it, Chico. He didn't know to say Chico. Groucho, Chico. No, my father. I don't confuse you with my father. You're not 50 years older than I am. No, sorry, I'll try to be. Please stop me when I'm not clear, both of you. And my dad said there are these four brothers, and he named them, and he said, Zeppo, I read the other day, was always criticized, and one day Groucho defended him by saying, with Zeppo, we were worth $1 million. Without him, $2 million. And then the sad part of this is that when I was doing a summer show once on ABC, somebody said, Zeppo Marx, some feel, is the funniest of the Marx Brothers in real life. He's the only one who can make Groucho laugh. And I called him and talked to him for an hour, and it was hilarious. And he said, I got Marx Brothers stories nobody's got. But he said, why should I leave down here in the desert? I got my boat, I got my wife, I got all this stuff. And and then he talked to my producer, and my producer said, Zeppo wanted $5,000 and we can't afford it.
Isn't it true
How
that
stupid we were.
Did Zeppo play Groucho in some of the plays?
Whenever Groucho was ill, Zeppo would take his spot. Now you also have to understand that Zeppo, are you ready for this, was 17 years younger than the eldest brother, Chico. So he wasn't a part of the act for quite some time until Gummo dropped out and didn't want to be in show business anymore. So when you stop to consider Zeppo doing Groucho, when Groucho wasn't feeling, I think what's remarkable about age is that what you saw up there, my dad was already 42, and Chico was 43, and Groucho was 40. And the reason for this kind of weird observation is the fact that they were 20 years in vaudeville before they got to Broadway, and they were 5 years on Broadway until you saw this second motion picture. So they were in the 40s, and I marvel at all of their athletic skills. I mean, my dad climbing up, that's every night in the same show, jumping up and down and doing all those things, and that great dance that Groucho did. And those guys were in their 40s by this time.